And we are back for episode 6.5. Our episode begins with an extra scene of Sansa receiving a letter from Littlefinger revealing that he has traveled up to Molestown and wants her to meet him. And so Sansa reluctantly goes to meet Littlefinger and uses the time to express her anger at him for giving her to Ramsay. Littlefinger apologizes and tells her that he has the Knights of the Vale waiting for her at Moat Cailin for her invasion of Winterfell. Sansa says that she doesn't want his help, and Littlefinger also informs her that her great-uncle the Blackfish has retaken Riverrun. Now, none of this happens in the book, but one can see the intended course correction in order to get back to what seems to be the book plot. In the book, Littlefinger and Sansa are still in the Vale trying to secure a unified Vale army to retake Winterfell, and this is roughly the same story we have come to here. Now, of course, in the book there's a much more complicated situation. There are factions in the Vale, with Littlefinger having an alliance of some houses, and Bronzeyon Royce leading an alliance of others, and all sorts of crafty wildcard characters about. We have no idea if the Vale will be unified or how, or if the Vale army will actually go north for Sansa. Likely they won't, as it's a blizzard up there, but this is the current Littlefinger spoken plan. Now, regarding the show's plot of the Blackfish and the retaking of Riverrun, this is actually a correction of diverging plots from Season 3. In Season 3 of the show, the Blackfish goes north to the Twins to attend the Red Wedding, but then escapes the carnage when he goes to the bathroom. Riverrun is then taken by the Lannisters and the Freys off-screen, apparently. However, in the book, Riverrun does not fall after the Red Wedding, but is instead held by its castellan, the Blackfish, who never went north to the Red Wedding. Riverrun, by the way, in the book, is an incredibly difficult castle to take. It requires invasion from 3 different fronts simultaneously, not something easily done like here in the show. Next, we head to Braavos, where Arya is still getting defeated pretty solidly by the Waif, when Jaqen comes in and decides to give her a little story on the House of Black and White and its beginnings. Jaqen explains that the first Faceless Men were slaves who were taught to change their face by the Many-Faced God. They killed their overseers in Valyria, taught their abilities in exchange for service, and fled Valyria to found Braavos. Now in the book, the history is a bit different. The Kindly Man explains that the first Faceless Man's identity is unknown. He was perhaps a slave, perhaps a lord, perhaps an overseer. He actually started the religion to put slaves out of their misery, though the group did later kill the overseers as well. The growth of the sect occurred when the murder of an overseer was given in exchange for lifelong service to the faith. Quite significantly, the history of face changing has not been given in the book. We don't know where it comes from or how they do it. Additionally, although Braavos was founded by escaped slaves from Valyria, there is no mention of these slaves being Faceless Men. So here in the show, Jaqen decides to give Arya a second chance with a new assignment, though Jaqen warns that there will not be a third chance for Arya. If you remember, Arya failed to kill the insurance salesman and instead decided to kill Meryn Trant. Incidentally, in the book, we aren't sure if Arya was successful or not with her first assignment with the insurance salesman. She reported to the Kindly Man that she mixed in a poisoned coin with the money of a customer. But we have no idea if Arya was telling the truth or whether the plan was successful. The assumption is that the insurance salesman died, though we have no confirmation. Nonetheless, in both book and show, Arya is given a second hit job. And so here in the show, Arya scopes out her target, an actress in a play. The play is titled The Bloody Hand, and it's about Tyrion as the mastermind villain. The play reenacts events surrounding Ned's time as Hand, Robert's death, Ned's execution, Tyrion's time as Hand, Tyrion's marriage to Sansa, and Joffrey's poisoning. Arya watches the play disgusted and hurt as the play portrays Joffrey and Cersei as heroes and her father as a doofus. After the show, the actor who plays Joffrey worries about a genital wart, while the owner of the playhouse in Zambaro scolds the actress who plays Sansa. Arya finds her target, Lady Crane, having a drink with the actor Bobono, who plays Tyrion. Arya returns to the House of Black and White to report that she plans on poisoning Lady Crane's drink, and that she figured out who wants Lady Crane dead, the actress playing Sansa. Arya, though, expresses reluctance to kill Lady Crane, as she seems to Arya to be a good woman, and Jaqen orders Arya to do the hit anyway, as death comes for all, the wicked and the good. Now in the book, we do have quite a few similarities to this scene. Arya is ordered to go to a theater for some mission, and the theater is doing a play about Tyrion called The Bloody Hand. The largest differences being that Arya herself is in the play, and the play is being done for the benefit of an emissary from King's Landing, Harry Swift, during his visit to the Iron Bank. In the show, Mace Tyrell is sent to Braavos instead, and the event happens earlier. So in the book, Arya spends a fair bit of time in her new identity, an actress named Mercy, a name probably chosen because it reminds Arya of her time with the Hound, who taught Arya to mercy kill and demanded mercy from her. Arya's previous names were Cat and Beth, chosen because one was her mother and the other was a girl from Winterfell. So Arya spends time training with the acting troupe and actually plays the role of Sansa in the play. It's not a large role, but it does involve a scene where Tyrion rapes her. Arya actually spends time putting a fake phallus in Bobono's pants before the play, so in both book and show we do have genitalia hanging out. So like in the show, the play and the book is a mistelling of the events that we know. In the play version of history, Tyrion rapes Sansa, and there is irony to this as in reality Sansa was spared any sex with Tyrion. Additionally, while Arya is being fake raped in a play, Jane Poole, who is playing Arya over at Winterfell, is being real raped by Ramsay. Now, unlike in the show, we don't actually see the play performed in the book, but we can figure out from a few comments some major events that occur in it. We know that the play opens with Tyrion making a bargain with the Stranger, a horned creature in this play, as the Braavosi don't really understand Westerosi religion. We also know that there's a scene where a man in a boar costume kills Robert, there is a Sansa-Tyrion rape scene, and we know that eventually the story advances to Tyrion's trial. There are a whole lot of little things that the show has made similar to the book. In the book, there is a character named Lady Stork instead of Lady Crane, and she does have a drink before every show. And the theater owner is an actor named Isambaro who plays Robert in the play, and Bobono is an actor who plays Tyrion. Also, Jaqen's scolding of Arya as she judges her target is similar to a scolding that the kindly man gives Arya in the book. Both men tell Arya that she is not to judge her target. The big difference is that Arya is attempting to talk herself into killing the insurance salesman, only to have the kindly man say that all men are both good and evil. Next we get an extra scene where Bran travels back in time to observe Leaf and the other children of the forest creating the Night King, presumably the first White Walker. Bran returns and angrily confronts Leaf, and Leaf says that they did it because the humans were killing them off and destroying their trees. Now this was an eyebrow-raising scene for book fans as no origin of the White Walkers has yet been given in the book. It is one of the book's biggest mysteries. It is rather notable that the history of the Children of the Forest in the book doesn't really make sense. Maester Luwin tells us that there was an alliance between the First Men and the Children thousands of years ago before the Long Night, and he claims that it was the Andals who attacked the children and killed them off. Except that the Andals never went north of the Neck, and yet there are no children there, so Luwin's story definitely has holes in it. Additionally, Bran is suspicious of the Children of the Forest, wondering why they are helping humans when humans drove them to near extinction. He thinks it odd that they aren't wroth with humanity. And so there definitely seems to be some dark secret that the Children of the Forest are hiding, and them creating the others as a weapon may indeed be it, though we are of course not sure. Additionally, we don't really know if the children are on humanity's side or not. So here we see that Leaf is at least 8,000 years old. In the book, the Children of the Forest are long-lived, but they are hundreds of years old instead of many thousands like here in the show, though they do gain a sort of immortality when they enter the trees after death. And again, we should note that we have yet to be introduced to any leader of the others or first other like the Night King. We next come to the Kingsmoot, a rather famous scene from the book. Here in the show, the election begins with Aeron asking for claims to the Salt Throne, and Yara is first to make her claim. She says that the Ironborn have never made their mark on the world and are not respected by the lords of Westeros. Her offer to everyone is to build a great fleet in order to dominate for the first time. Incidentally, in the book, the Ironborn have dominated Westeros many times throughout history, most notably under Harren the Black, who built Harrenhal. So the Ironborn initially reject Yara, saying that Theon is Balon's living male heir, and so Theon comes forward with a speech about how Yara is a reaver and a great leader, and how he supports her. The Ironborn begin to cheer Yara's name when Euron comes forward in a surprise move and makes his claim for the Salt Throne. Yara accuses Euron of murder, and he actually confesses to killing Balon, saying that everyone hated him and that his wars were stupid. Theon then accuses Euron of not being in the Iron Isles and gallivanting around the world, and Euron says that his travels are actually an advantage, and that he plans on building a fleet and offering it to Daenerys in exchange for marriage. And so Euron is declared king, and Aeron proceeds to give him a baptism. Euron awakens after nearly being drowned and wants to murder Theon and Yara, but they have fled with the Ironborn's best ships. Euron then wants everyone to build him 1,000 new ships. Oof. So although the Kingsmoot does occur in the book, it's really strikingly different. So first off, the Kingsmoot's entire function was a ploy by Aeron to keep Euron off the Seastone chair. Euron molested Aeron when they were young, and Aeron hates him. Aeron instead wanted his brother Victarion, who's not in the show, to be king. Additionally, Euron's presence at the Kingsmoot is no surprise. Everyone knows he's going to make a claim, as he arrived in the Iron Islands weeks before. In fact, the entire reason there's a Kingsmoot is to prevent him from being king. That said, Victarion and Asha don't really see him as a threat to their claims, as only minor houses support him ahead of the Kingsmoot. Now, the show presents the Kingsmoot as a regular thing, but also states that Theon is Balon's heir, which is sort of a contradiction. There is no contradiction in the book, as the King's Moot held is the first one in 4,000 years. Theon is only Balon's heir according to Greenland law, which the King's Moot is setting aside. And there is a plot point later on that the King's Moot may be nullified by Theon, as major claimants must be present for a King's Moot to be legitimate. And there are also other claimants to the Seastone Chair: Dustin Drum, Eric Ironmaker, and Gilbert Farwind. They are rejected for being too boring and niggardly, too old and crippled, and too weird, respectively. Gilbert Farwind is by far the most interesting claimant, as his house is filled with skin changers supposedly, and he wants everyone to build ships to sail westward to a new land. Victarion is the first major claimant, essentially saying that he will rule as Balon did and continue his war on the north. In the book, Balon is rather well loved despite his disastrous wars, and Euron certainly does not confess to killing such a popular man. It's Asha that ridicules Victarion's position of continued war, pointing out that the wars have brought the Ironborn nothing but pine cones. She, unlike Yara here in the show, proposes peace instead. She says she has a tentative agreement with the Northerners that will give them holdings in a sparsely populated area on the northern coast. The two candidates appear to be equally popular when Euron makes his claim. Now, Euron's speech in the book is much more of a spectacle. He begins it with a blasting of a horn, which he claims is a dragon horn from Valyria. He then puts forward his credentials. He is the eldest male heir, he has traveled the world, and he's never been defeated in battle. No one criticizes Euron for being gone, as he was only gone a few years, and it was a mandated exile for either raping or having sex with Victarion's wife. Euron then compares the claimants' offers. Victarion offers the north, Asha less, but Euron offers all of Westeros. He claims the dragon's horn will bind dragons to his will, and that this is how he will force Daenerys to marry him. Finally, and rather significantly, he puts forward a very generous bribe for the Ironborn. He places treasures from far away in front of them. Now, we aren't sure if sorcery was at work, or if the Ironborn were simply persuaded by his words, his offer, or his money, but the Ironborn overwhelmingly accept Euron as their king. Even Aeron, who hates Euron, mysteriously crowns him, though he comes to his senses quite quickly afterwards. After the King's Moot, as in the show, Asha does run for her ships to escape, though she heads to Deepwood Motte in the north, where she is captured by Stannis. Asha doesn't steal anyone's ships, and her following is rather small. Now, here in the show, Euron is drowned, but in the book, this is not part of the crowning ceremony. Drowning is a baptism of sorts in the Ironborn's faith, and involves a mouth-to-mouth resuscitation called the Kiss of Life. The kiss is meant to be compared to the Kiss of Life that brings back Beric Dondarrion, only not supernatural. In the book, not only is Euron not a follower of the drowned god, but Aeron would not want to put his lips on his molester and tormentor. Now, in both book and show, we hear of 1,000 ships as a figure of the Ironborn's strength. Here in the show, the ships are soon to be built, while in the book, they already exist. Now, 1,000 ships seems like quite a lot, but we should remember that in the book, Ironborn longboats are rather small, unlike the huge Ironborn ships that we see in the show. Next, we get an extra scene of Dany talking to Jorah and not knowing what to do with him. He reveals that he has grayscale and must leave her company for a third time. Dany then orders Jorah to find a cure. Of course, nothing like this happens in the book, as Jorah doesn't even have grayscale. We then go to Meereen, where Varys mentions that a fragile peace has been achieved after their meeting with the slave cities. Tyrion is not satisfied, and so he decides to invite a representative from the Red Temple in Volantis. The representative agrees to preach that Dany is the chosen one. Varys shows antipathy towards the woman, and she reveals that she knows all about his castration and the mystical voice he heard during it. Now, this doesn't happen in the book, but there are some similar elements. There is a fragile peace that occurs after Dany gets engaged to Hizdahr when he delivers 90 days of no killing from the Sons of the Harpy. It's still a mystery how this was achieved. Also, the Red Temple in Volantis does preach that Dany is the chosen one, but this is never utilized by Dany or Barristan when ruling Meereen. There are some Volantene soldiers currently heading to Meereen that perhaps will fight for Dany. They are members of the so-called Tiger faction of Volantis who largely worship R'hllor. The showrunners may have been planting seeds of Volantene R'hllor worshippers joining Dany to match the book. Next we get an extra scene of Bran bored, and so he goes back into the weirwood to find himself north of the Wall. He sees the army of the dead and the Night King, and then the Night King touches Bran, and this somehow marks Bran and makes him vulnerable, so the Three-Eyed Raven says they must accelerate their lessons. So at this point, we have gone beyond any book plot for Bran. We have no idea if any of this will happen in the book. We then head to the Wall to find Jon and company planning their assault on Winterfell. The team discusses how things look dire, as Ramsay has the Umbers, Manderleys, and Karstarks on his side, which is half the north. They realize they need to gather the support of all of the smaller houses, and Sansa mentions that the Blackfish may help as well. Sansa then sends Brienne south to treat with the Blackfish, not trusting a raven, and Brienne expresses her distrust for everyone around Sansa. Jon says goodbye to Ed, and Ed finds that he has somehow been appointed Lord Commander. Now, although we have passed beyond Jon's book plot, we are now getting elements of Stannis' book plot that were previously left out. In the book, the Boltons believe that they have the support of the Karstarks, the Umbers, and the Manderleys. The actual situation is a bit more complicated, as the Karstarks are feigning support for Stannis and the Umbers and Manderleys may be feigning support for the Boltons, but the result is the same. The Boltons have the lion's share of the support in the north. It's Stannis who has to venture out, traveling around collecting smaller houses to support him. And finally, we get back to the Bran plot, where Meera realizes that the White Walkers have arrived. The Children of the Forest attempt to slow down the White Walkers, but to no avail. Bran is busy watching his father go off to the Vale as the Whites breach the cave. Meera then commands Bran to warg into Hodor to help them. Bran, confused, looks over to Hodor and begins to warg him. We then get a number of deaths. Summer is torn apart by Whites, the Night King takes down the Three-Eyed Raven, and Leaf becomes a suicide bomber. The Whites try to catch Meera as she escapes with Bran, and she yells to Hodor to hold the door. In a creepy time-traveling paradox, Bran sends the message, "Hold the door," which causes old Hodor to achieve his destiny, leaving young Hodor mentally broken. Now, in an interview with the showrunners, they did claim that "Hold the door" did come from George R. R. Martin himself. And there was an incident where an elevator doorman years ago mentioned to George R. R. Martin that he figured Hodor was short for "Hold the door," and George R. R. Martin told him that he was correct. And so in the book, it does seem that there will be some sort of time-traveling paradox hold the door message sent to young Hodor, though we have no idea if it will involve an escape from the cave like here in the show. In the book, the Three-Eyed Crow's cave doesn't have a door as far as we know, so we aren't clear what door would be being held. Incidentally, in the book, warg has not been used as a verb. Generally, a warg is a noun meaning a wolf-based skin changer, though there is one incident where Cersei jokes about being a warg if she can skin change a boar. It's actually the fandom that would sometimes use warg as a verb, and it seems to have slipped into the lexicon of the show. And that's all for episode 6.5. See you in episode 6.6.